Okay, so, geez, I don't even know how to explain this. I went ahead and got into a conversation, supposedly with a person who was near where I lived, right? That's what the profile said on the damn dating app, right? And we matched, right? And I think I sent a message, and I literally told him, okay, I'm thinking about getting some steaks where you live. If I'm off, I'd be fine if you wanted to mooch. I was practically offering to buy them a steak, which frankly, that's not the smartest thing to do. But I'm abhorrently lonely, right? And, I wouldn't mind going and having some company from a pretty lady, just even if they were just there to, mooch a steak off of me. I don't care, whatever. It's worth the trip anyways. And maybe it would have led to something. Who knows? That was my thought process. Turns out supposedly this person, wasn't actually from the area. Turns out they were from the freaking UK. I'm like, oh, well, you're probably a scammer. And they decided to say, oh, hey, you should go onto my OnlyFans. And I'm just like, bruh, do I look like a simp to you? It's one thing to buy somebody a steak. That's one thing. You could say that's simpy, I guess, but you want me to pay money to talk to you. Before you say, oh, why don't you go to churches to find women? Why don't you go to clubs to find women? Why don't you go to these places or those places or these places or those places? Listen, the women that may or may not be available at church are either already in relationships, are already married, are far too old, or are far too young. There are not a lot of eligible bachelorettes in church. Now, I could just go to a different church full of more women, but there's a problem with that. Most of those churches have terrible theology. And unfortunately, I imagine if I were to go to those churches and I were to find a woman and we were to start dating, the moment I brought up going to a different church, she would say no. She would pull away and she'd say, no, I've been going to this church for years. Like, yeah, well, they have terrible theology. They have terrible doctrine. They teach a backloaded works-based gospel. And I'm not saying ladies are not capable of being aware of false doctrine and false teachings. I'm not. I'm just aware it's a small percentage, just like it is a small percentage with men. So I don't find church to be a wholly viable place to find women, frankly. Like, honestly, if I had to choose, and I didn't always think this way, but I do now, if I had to choose between a materialist woman and a lady with, terrible doctrine, works-based, backloaded works-based, Catholic, Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, whatever, I would literally rather go with the atheist woman. And that's not because an atheist woman is inherently morally superior, okay? They are at least not completely corrupted with these institutional religions. And I do mean that very literally. Institutional religions are a humongous problem in the body of Christ. And when I say body of Christ, I'm not referring to the spiritual body of Christ, right? The believers. I'm talking about the organizations here on earth. Okay, those things are not good. And they make no sense. Okay, you don't need to go to a building with 100 freaking people to listen to one guy talk to you all for 45 minutes straight, and then to have maybe 5 minutes of conversation before the beginning of church and at the ending of church with other people. That's not good. That's not a good way to have fellowship. Okay? If you want to have the best times I ever had fellowship was always in small gatherings of guys. And unfortunately, I can't seem to find a small gathering of guys and gals. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that it doesn't seem like there's any actual regular social outlook or conventional way to meet women. There isn't. And before you say, well, why don't you just go ahead and cold approach women? People don't do that anymore. They don't. They either meet each other on the internet, they either meet each other through a friend, or that's it. I have no social life. I work nights. I've been out of the state for a couple of years, so basically all of my old friend groups are gone. I tried to rekindle those friend groups, and they basically all ghosted me. I'm not dead. I don't have a criminal record. I have a portfolio, a positive portfolio, very high for my age. I have a long-term plan to retire, at least by my 40s, maybe 50s, depending. And I cannot find a freaking woman. I tried having a conversation with my dad earlier this morning about this, and frankly, I couldn't bother. I couldn't be bothered to talk about it. Not because I don't think my dad doesn't care. I think he does care, obviously he cares. It's just that there have been opportunities for me to meet women, right? But they're not with women I want to be with. And I am not a very picky guy. Or maybe I am a picky guy, you know? Maybe I just am really picky. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe I'm just too dang picky, you know? I don't want to be with an obese woman. An obese woman doesn't have respect for herself, and she's basically trying to make herself, well, she's not trying to, she is making herself unattractive to men. And if she's unwilling to change that fact about herself, she doesn't actually care enough about you and, you know, your desires to take them into consideration. For the most part. Maybe it's sometimes due to ignorance, but usually it's just because they like food. If she's not obese, she's significantly older, and a significantly older woman is not as likely to give you kids. Every time. Or she's already got kids. And you are going to be expected to take care of those kids. But you don't have the right to discipline them, to be an authority figure to them. But you're expected to be responsible for them from a societal standpoint if you were to date and marry a single mother. Which, by the way, there are no such thing as single mothers. Single mothers are completely and utterly lifted up by the state, by the government, through programs. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing inherently, you know, but the fact is that women do this, you know, on purpose. They have children with men that they know those men will not commit to them, and they're okay with it, and they be single moms. That's not a good thing. And that's a lot of women in the U.S. Oh, just a little rant. Little hopeless rant, as I am depressed since I've been up for almost 20 hours, and I've got 7 more hours on shift. Yep. And I'm tired. I haven't gotten sun in a while. Just tired, yeah. That's life. Oh well. I'm still hopelessly optimistic and altruistic because what other stance am I going to take? Okay, because the logical consensus of being nihilistic is just to go dig a hole and bury yourself. And obviously I'm not going to be doing that, so my only other option is to be hopelessly altruistic. And I am hopelessly altruistic. I am. I think that it's worth it. It's worth trying to live. An antinatalist would tell you that it's not. That it's actually better for the species to go extinct. Now, obviously, they won't directly say that. They'll say it indirectly. But logically speaking, the end goal of antinatalism is the extinction of the human race. So, yeah, lots of random topics. The worst part is like, I could be making more money. I could have more freedom of time and movement and bodily autonomy. I could be fitter. I could have all this sort of stuff. And I'd probably still be in the exact same boat. I'd probably be in the exact same boat with women. I don't even know where the hell to find them. I mean, I really don't. And it's getting to me. It's really, it's bugging me, you know? Like, what the heck am I supposed to do at this point in my life? Believe it or not, men also hit the wall. That's another lie of the manosphere. They claim that men somehow have infinitely more time than women. And like that's like biologically true in regards to having kids, but you need to consider whether or not a woman would even select a man who's significantly older. Like a man who's 40, okay, maybe. 45? 50? 55? You know, it's just like your physical attractiveness degrades with time. That's just what happens. You know, I'm 25. I'm in my prime age range right now. Between the years of 25 and 32 are my prime physical prowess, right? My fertility's at max, my testosterone's at max. I can absolutely, keep these things protected with a proper human diet, meat, eggs, maybe a little bit of cheese here and there. It's a proper treat. Sun exposure every day when I'm able to. Proper sleep, which obviously I'm not getting right now because I work freaking nights. But, like, what you see right now is probably the best you'll ever see. Like, I'm not getting any younger. And you need to consider the logistics, too.